So today we talked about genetics and how you can inherit different traits from your parents and how you don't necessarily look exactly like them. So for our bell question we did, why don't you look exactly like your mom, your dad, or your siblings, even though your siblings have the exact same parents as you do? So the reason why you don't look exactly like your family members is this. So we all have the same genes, as in like we have genes that code for our hair color, we have genes that code for our eyes, but they can come in slightly different versions called alleles. So you can have a blonde-haired allele, you can have a red-haired allele, you can have a dark-haired allele, or brown eyes and blue-eyed allele. So these are different versions of the same gene. So you can get alleles from your mom and your dad. Their blend of alleles is what makes you genetically different from them. So they have two sets of alleles each because they got one from their mom and one from their dad. And then they're going to pass on one of those to you. So you're going to get one from your dad and one from your mom to give you to give you a pair of alleles. So same thing, just like they got a set from their mom, a set from their dad, you're also going to get a set from your mom and a set from your dad. So their blend of alleles makes you genetically different from them. It also makes you genetically different from your siblings also, because if this is your parents' candy jar, then you have if this is all the different alleles that they have, you have a purple allele and a red allele for the same gene. You also have a yellow allele and a blue allele for the same gene. And then you also have two green candy cane alleles for the same gene. So you have three different genes and two different versions for each of them. So their candy jar could end up giving you a purple lollipop and a blue cough drop, or it could end up giving you a red lollipop and a yellow cough drop, or you could get a purple lollipop and a yellow cough drop. So there's many different combinations of genes that you can inherit from just your one parent, because you only get one set from them. So you might have inherited this jar while your sibling might have received this jar, which is why you and your sibling don't look exactly alike. So this is called natural selection. Random mutations in our genes lead to differences within a population. So that's how we ended up with things like darker hair or lighter eyes or darker eyes. And some of these mutations may be beneficial and actually help an organism survive and reproduce. So we talked about how there's a game called telephone that most of you folks have played, but if you whisper a message to your neighbor and then your neighbor passes it on to another person and that person passes it on and on and on and on, by the end, you're going to end up with a message that is similar to what you started with, but probably also very different. And the reason why is just because people make mistakes over time. So one person might make a mistake and they'll pass it on to the next person. That person will take their mistake and maybe also make their own mistake, and so on and so forth. So all of these mistakes can add up to big changes. So that's how evolution works. So our DNA works very similarly. So the DNA is like the message that you're passing along in telephone. So it's made out of combinations of 4 different things called base pairs, which you'll learn about in high school biology. But we can consider these like 4 different letters. So different combinations of these letters make different words. And then your cells read these words in your DNA to create things like proteins, to tell it what kind of cell it is, to tell it what its job is, etc. So that's how your DNA works. It's the message that each of your cells carry to figure out what they're supposed to do and how they help your body. So just like the message and telephone can get mixed up, so can the DNA inside of your body. So none of your cells last forever. Your cells are going to die and your cells are going to need to be replaced, especially things like skin cells or the cells inside of your mouth. Those cells get replaced very, very quickly. So what happens is, especially for those of you that are still growing, your body is constantly making new cells. And the way that it does that is it replicates or duplicates the DNA from an existing cell to make a new cell. So every time it duplicates the DNA, there's a possibility for it to make a mistake. So it's just like the game of telephone. There's a possibility that you could make a mistake. So when that happens, these are called mutations, when there's a mistake in your DNA. And it can happen randomly. So These mistakes can be harmful, so it can lead to things like cancer. For instance, if you go outside in the sun and you get really sunburned, if you have enough exposure to UV radiation, eventually it can actually mess with your DNA and give you a mutation. These mutations can tell the cell that it should divide constantly, and that's how we end up with things like tumors and cancers and stuff like that. These mutations can also be neutral, so it doesn't really affect you one way or another because it's not that important, whatever the gene was that got mutated, or it can be beneficial. Like, for instance, maybe there's a gene that makes it more resistant for you to get sunburned in the first place. So it's totally random. So evolution doesn't have a rhyme or a reason to how things happen. It's just these mistakes happen, and sometimes they're good, and sometimes they're not good, and sometimes they're neutral. So that's what we talked about today, how you can get genes from your parents. So different aspects of your appearance, like your eye color or your earlobe shape, are called traits or characteristics. These are things that we can actually see with our eyes, things that your body actually took those genes and did something with them. So these sections of DNA are dedicated to a specific trait called genes. Generally speaking, you get one copy of each gene from your mom and one copy from your dad. In high school, you'll get more in depth and you'll learn more vocabulary words for this, but for the sake of our class, that's how it's going to work. So these genes can either be dominant or they can be recessive. So when genes are used by our body, when they affect how our body works, scientists say that this gene is being expressed or it's turned on. It's actually being used. So genes can be dominant or recessive. So dominant genes need only one copy to be expressed. So maybe your dad has dark hair, but your mom has light hair. So you inherit a dark hair gene from your dad, and you inherit a light colored gene from your mom. Then you have your dad's dominant dark hair gene and your mom's recessive light hair gene. So what that means is your hair is going to end up darker because you just need one copy of that dominant gene in order for it to be expressed or turned on in your body. So that's not exactly how hair color works, but we'll roll with it. And then a recessive gene means that you need two copies. So one from your mom and one from your dad in order for that to be expressed or turned on inside of your body. So for instance, if blonde hair was a recessive gene, then you would need a blonde haired copy from your mom and a blonde haired copy from your dad in order for you to be blonde. So that's what we mean by dominant or recessive. So we did this activity that was like, what kind of genes do you have? And we took a look at different traits that you might have and how they are related to genetics or inherited in some way, shape, or form by a variety of genes. And then we went into Punnett Squares, which is what you're going to be doing for your activity today. So inheritance means that these traits are going to be inherited from your parents based on the genetics that they give you. So for easier traits, so all of the ones that we talked about in class, they require a number of different genes to work together. But for easier traits, can we predict what the next generation is going to look like or what they're going to inherit if we know their parents? And the answer is we can. So we use these things called Pundit Squares. So they're tools that help us to predict traits that children might have or get from their parents. So you put your mom on one side, your dad on the other side, and then each of these boxes represents a potential combination of genes that you could get from your mom and your dad. So for instance, your mom has two sets of genes, and you're going to inherit one from her. Your dad also has two sets of genes, and you're going to inherit one from him too. So dominant genes, the ones that you'll need one copy of, like dark hair, those are represented by a capital letter. Recessive genes are represented by a lowercase letter. So that means you need two copies of those in order for your body to actually use those and for it to be expressed. So here's an example. You're a guinea pig breeder, and there are two kinds of guinea pigs, hairy guinea pigs and hairless guinea pigs. Hairy guinea pigs are more in demand, so you want to get your pig's DNA tested. You have hairy guinea pigs. They all have hair, but you're not exactly sure if they carry this recessive gene or not for hairless guinea pigs. So it turns out all your guinea pigs have one copy of the dominant gene, and they also have one copy of the recessive gene. So they have both the hairy gene and the hairless gene or allele. So you would write that as H, capital H and lowercase. So for both your guinea pigs, they would have a capital H and a little h. So they have one dominant gene and one recessive gene. So this is what it could end up actually looking like, though. So this is what's called their phenotype, which is how they look. So the genotype is the genes that they have. Their phenotype is what they end up looking like. So hairy genes, you just need one copy of the capital H hairy gene in order for the guinea pig to actually look like it's hairy. So it could be capital H and a little h, or it could also be two capital H's. So either of these two is going to lead to a hairy guinea pig. Hairless guinea pigs, on the other hand, you have to have two copies of that recessive little h in order for it to be hairless. So this is what's called a Punnett Square, and this is what we use to figure out what the children might look like. So you put your mom on one side, and you put your dad on the other side, and you put their genes in here. So both your mom and your dad are capital H and lowercase h because they have one dominant and one recessive. And then what's inside of the squares represents the potential combinations for all of their children for this one gene. So we're going to fill this out. So the first thing you do is you want to separate the mom's genes into the two columns. So one is going to go here. The other one is going to go here. Same thing for the dad. Capital H will go here. Little h will go here. And then you're going to combine them. So you're going to take one of mom's genes and one of dad's genes or alleles and then combine them together inside of the box. So the blue capital H and then the green lowercase h. Then you're going to do the same thing with the next box. So you're going to take the lowercase h from mom and the lowercase h from dad and combine them into this box. So right now we can see that here we have a dominant hairy gene and then also a hairless gene. So this guinea pig, if it received those genetics, would end up being a hairy guinea pig. This one, on the other hand, has two recessive alleles. So that means that it's going to be a hairless guinea pig because it has both of them. So next, students tried to figure out what the next two would end up looking like. So in total, the box would be filled out something like this. So you have two uppercase H's, one from dad and one from mom. And then here you have a lowercase h from mom and then an uppercase h from dad. So altogether, you would end up with 3 guinea pigs that would have hair and 1 guinea pig that wouldn't. So the probability of having a guinea pig that has hair would be 1, 2, 3 out of a total of 4. And the reason why is because all 3 of these have at least one uppercase H, because that's all you need for a dominant allele. So when you're done with that, you figure out the probability. So you have a 3 out of 4 chance of having a hairy baby guinea pig or a 75% chance. So that's what we went over in class today.